today's topic might have scared people away.
Weed out the week.
So we started the recording, so I'm going to take a dive into this. Akaba, welcome. Agbo, blessing, long life. How to play Egum. We thank the ancestors for their wisdom. I was motivated to talk about the question of does God answer our prayers by a question asked by a student this last week who I don't want to, I'm not going to talk about anybody's personal business, but let's just say over the periodically get discouraged over the notion that God doesn't answer our prayers. And I think that's an important question. And actually, I think that it is really at the foundation of how we perceive spiritual discipline. We've got Andrew's here, one of the great theological, not that everybody doesn't have opinion. Andrew's close to finishing his master's degree. Andrew, tell us again your topic, if you don't mind. Hello? Did he hear me?
Sorry, my phone went a little crazy there for a second.
Oh, I'm not getting sound here. Hold on, it's my problem. Wait, I've got my sound turned off. Sorry. Now we're cooking. Tell us what your topic is, Andrew, in school.
All right, and to the elders here. My degree is in psychology, so I'll be finishing this, then trying to find a college to finish up the rest of my school once I get out the military.
I like it. I like it. And the last time we met in New Mexico, you gave a wonderful lecture on Western occult traditions. Really informative. I thank you for that. All right, so I'm just going to throw the question out here. Miss Iya, so Bonde is looking very eager to contribute. Let's see, look at that. See, I'm going to call on you first, I think. So let's throw the question out before we talk about it from my perspective. Anybody have an opinion on the question of does God answer prayers? Andrew, what's your opinion on it? Did you hear me, Ann? All right, Jonathan has a response. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, so does God answer our questions or our prayers?
Our prayers.
So, well, usually when we're speaking to spirit, our question is the prayer as well, right? But anyway, enough of my snarky
I would say so,
comments.
sure. Yes, yeah.
So, in my own personal experience,
those are always good.
In my personal experience, every time I've been in a severe crux, in a very bad juxtaposition, and you just put your head down and go, okay, so my ways, the egotistical mind ways, aren't working. So what do I have to do to get out of that, so that way I can actually function, right? And whenever this has come up for me, I just let go, surrender to the fact that I'm not in control. And that's that moment, letting go of that control, is when the answers have always come. So I'll get an offer, or I'll get an invite to go somewhere. I'll get an opportunity. I know. Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. I like what you're saying.
Well, you start to see the opportunities that you've actually been hiding from yourself, right? Because in all honesty, that's what we're all really doing, is we're just hiding from ourselves, and Spirit wants us to be authentic with ourselves. So life
Right.
changes when you surrender, and surrender to something greater than what you were thinking or what you're trying to create for yourself. Because it comes back to community, right? What we're doing isn't for ourselves, it's for the benefit of others.
You
There's my
know,
2 cents.
at the risk of sounding paternalistic, that's a really good answer. I like it. It's pointing in the direction that I want to head. It's definitely in the same trajectory. So thank you for that. Eileen, did you want to say something?
I would say that the creative source does answer prayers. And when I've seen the most happen has been when I've gone to Eshu. But I think the key to whatever it is that you're wanting is that surrender. And I've always phrased the question, look, this is what's going on. This is what I want. However, I'm aware that you're aware of the bigger picture. Please bring me what's best for me and help me. This is the key. Help me to have, and this next sentence takes away all the concern over it. Help me to have peace in my heart concerning the situation. And I've seen incredible things happen. So you're surrendering it, knowing
Nice call.
higher source has the answer, will bring you the best, and you ask for peace in your heart concerning it, and continue to ask for that peace to let it go.
That's headed the same direction too. I knew Sobande had a question before she put her hand emoji up. See, I'm getting pretty good at reading folks here. Yeah, do you want to say something?
Yes, Baba. I'd like to add and piggyback on those two answers. That for me, I do believe that the God, Goddess, universe, ancestors do answer the call. I believe that is when you continuously aim to stretch yourself on your own timeline of life. Most of us are pretty muted, I think, when it comes to stretching ourselves, because stretching requires a little challenge. And I found it to be true that when I stretch myself, I can meet my own destiny on my own timeline. What's for me is going to be for me. And my intention is that I'm always co-creating community, that I'm always weaving in community. It is not the I in the bigger scheme of things. And so when I focus on the intention of co-creating community, that things that are in alignment for me, for my highest and greatest good, always appear on my timeline. So I do believe that we are benefactors and co-creators of God's prayers or the ancestors' prayers. So yes, I do believe that those things are answered.
Listen, there's not as much confusion around this issue as yeah, that's another good answer. I like it. Yeah, I'm just going to be quiet here today, I think. Thank you for that. Andrew, did you want to say something? You're breaking up there, Ia. Were you through? I'm sorry. Can you hear me, Ia? Yeah, okay. Andrew, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Bob, I was just gonna jump off of that last one. I like the concept of co-creating. So I think it depends on how we define God, right? So as far as I've seen, prayers do get answered, but it usually depends on the intent that you come at the prayer with to create. So you say, oh, I want $1 million, or I want all these trivial things, but the things you care about and that you put energy towards the petition, right? The way that you're trying to shape what you want to happen at the same time as you ask the creator for it, with the focus obviously on community. And the more people who are asking for the same thing you are, the more likely it is to be created because there's less conflict. So as long as we're all asking for the same things with intention, then I believe they absolutely do get created. Because like she said, we are co-creators, so we're all shaping it together.
I agree. So listen, this family is blessed to have a growing, let's call it Egbe of academically trained theologians. And obviously that's not the be all and end all, but it's an important contribution. I don't think every Elay is blessed with that level of interest in theological issues. So I'm going to resident theologian, Mr. Fashegun Carlos, who's intently studying theology on the postgraduate level, and ask your opinion on this question.
Thank you, Baba. This is a brief question that I've heard it asked over decades in different ways, and it's complicated,
Sure.
and it depends who you ask and when. I have heard the question asked when someone is facing a life sentence in prison, and I've also heard the question asked when someone is dying, and the family members are gathered around the patient asking, does God answer prayer? So in my heart of hearts, I can say that I'm convinced God does based on my worldview, for me. But I have to honor when I'm working with other people that there's different ways of experiencing these things. Yeah.
Listen, before I dive into my perspective on this, is there anybody else that wants to make a comment? You got a little heart emoji there. Do you want to say something? Nice guy is my Lakota friend. Yeah. I mean, what's the Lakota view on this?
Oh, excuse me. Give me a second. Oh, no, I have family that are Lakota. I'm Mexica, so southern central Mexico.
Yeah, right.
That's okay.
Yeah, sorry. But what's your perspective on it?
Oh yeah, I appreciate the comments and the stories for sure. Well, my perspective is that yes, for sure, I think that the creators answer prayers, and also I think that there's other energies that also want to balance, these asks. So if we want something that's going to be like, on a certain vibration or a certain color, there's other energies that also want to be like, well, actually I also want to play some tricks and like balance it up here too, So I think just as much as if we want some goodness, for example, goodness, then there's going to be other energies also that are going to be, playing along. So I think that a lot of energies are listening.
I like that as well. Thank you. Malik, I'm not sure I know who I'm talking to. Malik, are you new to the group, or I'm just not recognizing your name?
Yeah,
Did we see you?
The last one on Sunday.
Okay, that's fine. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. When I think about God answering prayers, I'm mostly thinking about ourselves being a consciousness and God being the broader consciousness that we're part of. So when I think about answer the prayers, I see it as being like an expansion of consciousness of anything. Like a lot of things are available to us if we are aware of them, and if we grow or evolve our consciousness to be able to receive them. Like for example, when people want new jobs, taking on new skills is a small example, but that's an example of a way that you can get a job. And then also when it comes to the big thing that God cares about, like which is our like spiritual liberation and our enlightenment, God like participates in helping us to evolve that. He may point us in a direction toward books that may be assistance to us, or may even just join his consciousness with ours to give us a greater perspective or something like that. But just anything like objects and things like that, by growing our consciousness and increasing like our abilities, which is allowed or supported by God, we can attain the things that we want.
That's well spoken. A couple of those points nail the e-file perspective from my point of view. So thank you. Yes. Doctor, do you want to say something? I saw a hand emoji. Yours. Falokun.
Yes, Abura Boye Baba, and to all the elders in the room, Ikaro family. I would say that definitely God is uh, answers prayers, or answers our prayers, answers our ask, right? Always. One of the things for me that I try to make sure that I am always conscious of is that the answer may not always be what I want it to be. So the ask is always answered. It's always answered. We may not get what we think we're supposed to have, or what we say that we are wanting, or the answer may be in that there's a little bit more that we need to seek out or do, or as Jonathan mentioned, the process of releasing and letting go, right? Recognizing that we are not in control of certain things or anything, if at all, right? So for me, even when, as the Baba mentioned, when it comes to those ask around death and sickness and all of these things, the prayer is answered. It's just not necessarily the answer that we in our human form, right, in our human experience is wanting the answer to be. And with that, I will land my plane.
All right, so I think I'm ready to share. Y'all know what an Odu thumper is? It's kind of like a Bible thumper who quotes Odu excessively rather than thoughtfully. But I'm going to do a little Odu thumping this morning and talk about the Odu perspective on this question, unless someone else has an opinion they want to express before I dive into that. Okay, so the question, does God answer our prayers, really goes to the heart, I believe, of our perception of our spiritual discipline, if that makes sense. And I want to start the conversation by saying I see a lot about what it is we call God. I see a lot of Yoruba words translated to mean God, and as a bit of an amateur linguist, I'm not sure I always agree with those translations. But for me, the definitive translation for God is Olo Rum, from the Elegian Olo Orun. The word Orun actually means neck, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it means neck in the sense of connecting the invisible world with the visible world, all right? So Olo is the Yoruba word for owner, not in the sense of I've got a deed to the land, but owner in the sense of someone or something that knows everything or a lot about a particular subject. So Olo would be somebody who's mastered a particular discipline, say, all right? So Olo Ron means the owner of the invisible realm. Olo, even though it means neck, and in some translations means movement, it's a reference metaphysically invisible source of creation, all right? We all clear about that? I've seen Olodumare translated as God. I've seen Olofi translated as God. I've seen a number of other things, but for me, the definitive linguistic reference to God as creator, which is gender neutral, by the way. The word for that is Oloron. Now, Odu Ifa is very specific in that we have no Oriki for Olorun. Everybody notice that? No Oriki for Olorun. We don't invoke God. That's not part of what we do. To think we could invoke God is, I believe, a bit arrogant. Is everybody clear about that? Olorun. No Oriki. Also, I don't know if you noticed either, but in traditional Yoruba land in Nigeria, there are no shrines to Olorun. None, not a one. We do not mark a place that we designate as honoring God. In that sense, our tradition is very Buddhist. You know, Buddhism makes no reference to God per se in their spiritual practice. And it's actually, and I'm sorry I can't remember the Odu, but it's actually taboo to give any attributes to Olorun. Based on the premise that transcendent consciousness, transcendent consciousness cannot be defined by finite consciousness. In other words, humans cannot define the source of our consciousness. Because if we were able to define it and fully understand it, then we would be Olo Orun, or the owners of the invisible realm. You know, the ancient Greeks had a word for that, and another topic for another day, but Greek philosophy and theology is deeply rooted in Egyptian mystery schools, and I believe Ifa has a connection to those same traditions. So in Greek tradition, the idea that you can know God is called hubris. It's called the sin of hubris, actually. The arrogance of assuming that you know God's will. So Ifa quiz, in terms of our definition of Iwa Pele, why is this an important theological premise? We cannot know God's will. What does that link to in terms of Iwa Pele? Do we know? Eileen, yes, please.
No judgment.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, once you make a judgment, you're assuming to know God's will. If you look at the most judgmental people around you, including racists, they always justify their point of view by saying it's God's will. You know, always. They have an inside track on God's will, and they know that God hates homosexuals. They're clear about that. I had a person that dogged me for a year saying I couldn't be an Ifa priest unless I was homophobic. It was like, okay, that makes no sense. But so no judgment. That's an important corollary to the idea that we don't know God's will. And it's the reason why we don't have a Riki to God. We don't have praise names for God. We don't have Ofo Ashe or words of power to invoke God. We don't have descriptions of what God thinks and what God expects. We don't have shrines for God. It's kind of, it maintains its position in the hierarchy of things as the unknowable mystery. I did notice recently, I was surprised to see it actually, I've run across one alternative name for God, and that was Aramfe, which is very, very telling. Aramfe means body of love. And I think that's an appropriate synonym, but it's certainly rare, if that makes sense. Everybody with me? Aramfe from the lesion Ara, A-R-I-M. Aramfe. No, it's Aramfe. It's N, which is a placeholder, and then Fe, Ife. So body of love essentially is what that word means. All right. So what we have is an unknowable mystery, but what we also have is the reality that the unknown does have a symbolic representation. right? Anybody know where we see that symbol? Come on here, Ifa quiz. This is worth 10 points towards your exam for graduation. Where do we see this symbol? Nobody? This is a little thing I like to call the Ifa tray. Huh? Hello?
I said the Opan tray.
Yes, who said that? Yes, whoever said that. Exactly.
Talking yele.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Yes. All right. So in terms of addressing the question of does God answer our prayers, we need to take a brief look at what I call Ifa cosmology. All right. So when you're sitting in front of the tray, the first thing we mark on the tray is a dot in the center of the tray, right? You understand that? We put our finger here, this finger, and then we mark towards the top when we mark the 4 directions. So what we have here is a symbolic representation of the polarity between God and not God, right? The circle is the unknowable, undifferentiated reality before time and space. And then we have something other than God, and that's the beginning of life, death, transformation, and rebirth. All right. Anybody know what we call this dot, the center of the tray? This is big time quiz day, huh? What do we call the dot in the center of the tray? Diosa? What do we call this dot in the center of the tray?
I don't know, Baba. What do we call it?
Yes, you do. Oh, Yigi, oh, Yigi. We sing to it all the time.
Oh, Yigi, oh, Yigi.
Right. The word Yigi means shake, spirit of shaking. When you repeat a word in Yoruba, it's the primal spirit of that thing. So Oyigi is a reference to the very first movement in creation, right here. It's the being of what we could call frequencies, right? Everybody with me? Is that clear? God created movement, and from that movement, evolution evolved. That movement is frequency. Frequency is an expression of sound. I hate to jump. In the beginning was the word. Virtually every cosmology that I've ever read is initiated by the voice of God, right? In Hinduism, it's Om. In Ifa, it's Oyigi, and various other examples. You with me? So what Oyigi does is Oyigi splits reality in two. It splits it into the relationship between God and not God. Now we have the eternal source of creation and the finite manifestation of creation. Eileen's got a look on her face like she understands what I'm talking about here. I like that. Keep that look going. It means I'm being clear here. Everybody with me? No questions on that? All right, so the interesting thing is this picture really defines the next step. The in-between place between God, not God, what's that called? This right here. Anybody know? That's the portal between God, otherwise known as the womb, otherwise known as Odu, that actually looks like mama's reproductive organs, right? Can you see that? Spirit of this in-between place we call Olodumare. From the Elysian Olo Odu Oshumare, meaning the owner of the womb of the rainbow serpent. The rainbow serpent being a reference to the full range of frequencies that generate color, that generate structure and creation, right? So is that cosmology clear to everybody now? Because this is really the foundation for the question, does God answer our prayers? All right, so the next thing in this picture that gives us clarity on that is there's a lateral beam of light between God and not God that creates a record of everything that passes from here, the mind of God, into manifestation, the reality. All right. So, Omilade, what's that line called? You know?
She had to step away for just a second, Bubba.
Anybody? All right, no problem. It's not that big a mystery. This line is called Elah, right? So that becomes the great Ifa Trinity, I would call it, or trilogy. Virtually every based on these same three principles, except Catholicism masculinized Olodumare for reasons that we can talk about later, perhaps. But so we have God, we have not God, we have the space between, and we have the record of that interaction. So in Ifa Odu, the movement from here to here is called Ile Ife Orun Wa Ile Ife Aye, meaning the house of unconditional love in the invisible realm travels to the visible realm to recreate the house of love. Is that a clear metaphysical process that defines the movement of creation itself? Andrew, what do you think? Am I being clear here? I hope. Andrew, you hear me?
Yes, Bob. I think it's pretty clear. I liked how you pointed out.
To me, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So for say sound, I kind of take it as a vibration. Is that accurate? Like the vibration leads to the sounds and creations.
Yes. Yes.
So we're bringing things from.
Oh Yigi, oh Yigi.
And then
Oh Yigi in the invisible realm comes into the visible realm. I've got that backwards, into the visible realm as a shaking, right? Or a frequency of light.
Right.
This is a lateral beam with no shaking because it absorbs all the frequencies. So to put this in theological terms, not paleo-scientific terms, but theological terms, creation is the manifestation of God's idea in the physical realm. Olorun had the idea of unconditional love, which means perfect balance in all things. But if you have perfect balance, what don't you have in a universe with perfect balance? You know, what don't you have?
right, free will,
What
right?
you don't have Well, you don't have free will, but you also don't have time and space. You have nothing. You have transcendent nothingness. Everything's perfect. So in essence, creation is God projecting the perfect idea of unconditional love into includes the possibility of not love for the purpose of Olorun having the experience of what that looks like. Tell me if that made sense. All right, so essentially, reality is the eyes of God looking back at itself. And that in fact, all of creation, including things that we would consider negative or not loving, is an effort by the Creator to explore what love looks like when it becomes manifest in the world separate from the mind of God. So this leads us to what I would call really a deeply metaphysical idea that's at the foundation of our faith, and that is this. You've heard me speak of yugas or time frames. You know, in Odu Ifa, there's the cycle of creation from Obatala was the first one, followed by the cycle of creation overseen by Ogun, and the current cycle overseen by Orumi. So what happens is, Ifa tells us that our destiny is to manifest good character, and that in the process of manifesting good character, we bring heaven to earth. So everybody essentially has the same destiny, which is to be a good person. Trillions of variations, all of which feed into and develops God's idea of what it means to manifest unconditional love in the world. But here's a point that'll give a real foundation to today's question, I think. When all of the unconditional love in heaven manifests in the world, when Orun becomes IA, then IA becomes Orun, and the flow of energy goes from this side to that side, but with a greater level of complexity. Does that make sense? I hope.
Baba, can you repeat that, please?
I've got my.
Baba?
Yes, Carlos, you want to say? Yes, please.
No, I just want, can you please repeat that again, what you just said?
Yes, okay. Yeah, so Orun is the invisible realm that's made up of the idea of God, the ideas of God. Ideas, gods are essentially the creation of unconditional love in the world through quantum entanglement and the flower of life. In the process of that idea becoming manifest, it includes the element of free will, which means people can choose not to reflect their connection to creation. Does that make sense? I hope. Carlos looks confused. Talk to me. Where's your confusion?
You know what? You used the visual when you were speaking the first time, and you spoke about the actions with Orunmila moving back toward. Yeah.
This is Orun. This is God's ideas. When you're in the realm of ideas, think about your own ideas. Your ideas are in your head, but they need to move from your head to the world to become manifest, right?
Right.
So it's that way for us, same way with God. God's got a lot of good ideas about what law until they become manifest in the world. God doesn't really know if they're good ideas. Part of the process of evolution is God checking his or herself to see if the conceptual concept of unconditional love works in a world with life, death, transformation, rebirth, time and space, up and down, and free will. That makes sense?
Yeah. Mhm.
Hi, Baba.
You know, so God can look at this creation and say, okay,
Ashe.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Baba. I thought you were finished. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all right. I
Baba,
think we're good. Carlos, did I answer your question? Go ahead, yeah.
sorry, I had to step away for a moment, but I'm back. So I remember speaking about this. It was in New Mexico, and I believe that what was being said was that between Orun and IA, in the center of that was basically the creation, the light of Elah, right? Ella, is it Ella?
Right.
Okay, so that was the light of Ella
Ela, yes.
that produced creation.
Right here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that in the center was the beam of
No, that's
light.
not quite right. That's not quite right. This is the inspiration for creation. This is the manifestation of creation. It passes through the womb of Olodumare, and that movement is recorded by Elah, not manifested by Elah. It's recorded. This is the Akashic record, as they call it in Hinduism.
Got it. Okay.
That makes sense?
Absolutely.
Well, hold on here. Okay, so now I forgot where I'm going with this. So yes, okay, I think I didn't fully answer Carlos's question. The idea of God is moving towards manifestation in the physical world. When heaven comes completely to the earth, it represents the end of a golden age yuga, and then earth becomes heaven and heaven becomes earth, so that the Ashe flows back to its place of origin at a greater level of complexity for God itself. So the universe evolves based on God's experience of what the universe looks like when it becomes manifest. Does that make any sense? In order to take the next step here, that point needs to make sense. Lavani, are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you,
Am I making sense?
You are making sense. Thank you for outlining the diagram is particularly.
I got that. You're a little broken. I'm hearing a yes in that. Did you say yes? Somebody help me here. All right.
I'm gonna type in the chat instead if you can't hear me properly.
Boy, you're still broken. I'm sorry. I'm going to take that again as a yes. All right. So here's the point. Okay, so there's a polarity between Ori and Iponri, right? Ori is our consciousness. Iponri is our connection to source. So there's trillions of Oris in the universe, but there's one Iponri and we're all connected to it. So that means the act of prayer is prayer to our higher self. So in that sense, it's just not theoretically or physically possible for God not to hear our prayers. Does that make sense?
Can you say that again, Baba, one more time?
Right? Yes, because we're all connected to the single source of consciousness in creation, which we're calling God or Olarum, makes it impossible for God not to hear our prayers. But, and here's the key point. I'm going to say this and I'm going to pause for a minute and let it sink in. Because God created us for the purpose of manifesting Ile Ife, unconditional love in the physical realm, the only question God is interested in is, how do I do that? So the issue is not, does God answer the prayers or not answer the prayers? I would argue that God believes certain questions are irrelevant and unimportant to this process. Which is probably not well phrased because that's dangerously close to making a judgment. But here's the point that I want to make in terms of Ifasnav. God's not my prayers because God doesn't like me. Then you set up a dynamic that makes spiritual growth impossible. You're replacing God's judgment with your own personal judgment and personal insecurity. And then you're setting up the notion, well, if God's not answering my prayers, clearly God doesn't love me and I'm doing something wrong.
Isn't that Catholicism?
Making no judgment. Now you're applying that process to yourself, but you're really rooting your consciousness in insecurity and the need to please others. Tell me if that makes sense. So work with me here. Makes sense?
Fanny Baba, it makes sense.
So typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, typically we pray to God because we experience a problem that causes us pain and confusion. God, make it stop. You know, all my problems be over if I could only win the lottery. Like I'm the only one that's made that prayer. Right? So we have all these if only prayers, if only she'd love me, if only my parents didn't hate me, if only my boss liked me at work. You know, this is all to a judgment dynamic and pleasing others situation in which we then become dependent on the opinions of others, including God and Jesus. And I'm suggesting that the purpose of prayer is to expand our consciousness so that the thing causing pain and confusion morphs into clarity and gives us the ability to resolve a source of pain through our own actions. Ooh, Gail, there's another theologian in our mix. Speak to us, Gail.
Thank you, Abu Baba. That particular definition is the thing that I've been teaching in recent, is that the purpose of prayer is not to seek miracles, but to expand our consciousness beyond the obstructions of connecting to higher consciousness. Yes. Thank you.
Listen, that's it. The question we're posed for today. If you look at Robert Grant, who's a really good, he's really good at numbers and mathematics and patterns and codes. If you look at Leonardo da Vinci, if you look at the Odu itself, the way it's structured, this when we do divination, generating particular patterns. And those patterns, we believe, identify the issue that we're struggling with as a result of synchronicity. We ask our higher self to show us the pattern that's causing the pain and confusion, and that manifests when we slap the Ekin and mark it on the tray. This is the pattern that we're not clear about. And then we ask the ancestors, or Ori, Orisha, or Ifa, depending on the circumstance, to guide us towards that clarity. Once we have clarity, we're standing in stasis or balance. You know, Odu says, Ifa says every Odu that defines a problem is resolved by stasis with its opposite. So Yeku is the opposite of Ogbe, Ogunda, the opposite of Okanran, and so on. So the function of divination as a spiritual discipline in our faith is to develop the ability to see the Odus manifest in the course of the day, and then beyond that, to see both the problem and the solution manifest in the same moment, so that we don't have to waste time in we don't have to waste time in suffering and confusion, but we can just move towards the solution with grace and ease. And so we would define the ability to move towards solution with grace and ease as God answering our prayers. But from a metaphysical point of view, that's not exactly what's happening. What's happening is we're expanding our consciousness to be fully cognizant of that which is causing our pain, and to see a broader picture perspective that will then diminish our pain. It's a principle of what appears to be chaotic in the big picture becomes more organized as you become microscopic, and what appears to be organized on a microscopic level becomes more chaotic as you move away from it. So in a sense, prayer is asking forces in nature to guide us towards greater clarity to understand the world we live in. That makes sense? And what are we doing every time we get greater clarity? Anybody know? This is the big question. The answer to that question is the answer to the question, does God hear our prayers? What happens every time we expand our consciousness in terms of being able to resolve our own sources of conflict and pain? What is that process? Nobody?
Alchemy, Baba?
Help me out. Say again?
Alchemy?
Well, man, you can call it that, but what we're doing is we're bringing heaven to earth. Hello? Every time we're expanding our consciousness, we're getting a bigger picture, bigger of the source of everything. Based on Ifa's teaching that God made life to work. And when we find something that makes life work, we're reflecting the original intention of creation. And so why this is important is really important in my opinion, because I believe, and you know, spoiler alert, I'm making a judgment now, but I have noticed that it is common in our tradition for people to think they need to make offerings because spirits are punishing them for doing evil things. Anybody notice that, or is that just me that's noticed that? Am I the only one? No one's had that thought. Oh, if I only give Shango the right offering, everything would be nice.
I don't think it is just with our faith, but it's multiple faiths. It's the act of like giving your power away. That's the best thing I can come up with.
Yeah, that's not a bad description. I like that. But the point is that when we get into that dynamic of trying to please and trying to ameliorate anger, we're not engaging the process of expanding our own consciousness. That is why, for me, and it may be socially a little abrasive, but I'm not big on apologies and really processing emotions as I am on fixing the problem. You know, recently somebody told me that I got the impression from somebody they were trying to do initiations on their own. And I told them that that's fine, but don't do it in my name, right? And the person said they were offended by the fact that they thought I would think that. And my response is, I don't care. It looked like that. How do we fix it? You know, grow up, put on your big boy pants, man up, deal with the appearance that we have a problem. That's the only issue at play, you know. And that's not entirely true. I obviously don't want to hurt people's feelings. I certainly try to address any hurt feelings based on what I would call cultural or ethnic insensitivity. I mean, those are issues that we need to deal with as a community. But fundamentally, problem resolution is more about fixing the problem than it is licking wounds. Does that make sense? I hope. You know, it's certainly that way in the Ogboni meetings I've been to. Elders give almost no play to a person's feeling in a conflict. They just want to get to the resolution, to the thing that's effective, to the thing that's fair, to the truth of the matter, the thing that'll make the problem go away. For some reason, everybody's got their camera blocked out. People don't want me to see their reaction to this. Who wants to disagree with me? Who doesn't understand what I'm saying? Who feels I'm not being clear at this point? I'm going to take it to the next extreme. I mean, essentially, divination is problem solving, not fortune telling. We're all clear about that. If you come to me and say, will I win the lottery? My answer is don't know, don't care. If I won't tell you, go away. But if your question is, how do I earn enough money to support myself and my family? That's a problem solving question that we can address using the tool of Rumi. Does that make sense? If winning the lottery is part of the solution, it's going to come up in divination, but it's not the point of. You know, this comes up. Can everybody hear me still? Give me a thumbs up. I'm not seeing it, but okay. So, you know, that question comes up a lot around relationships. Does so-and-so love me? You know? But if you want that relationship to work, that's a problem-solving question that we can address. Here's what needs to be done to fix it. You decide if you're willing to do that. Night Sky, did you have a comment? Hello?
No, Bob, I didn't.
Okay. So the point is, I was really blessed to have I would call him a mentor, although he might not have taken me that seriously. But Paul Tillich, one of the great theologians of the 20th century. Tillich was the first person Hitler kicked out of Germany. Tillich created the curriculum for liberal theology in American academia. But he always said that the only way to have effective theological dialogue was to put the right question to which you already knew. In other words, and here was his example of it, which was classic. He never addressed the question, does God exist? His point was, don't know, can't prove it, don't care, it doesn't matter. But what I can address is I can look at the different gods that humans believe in and answer the question, which of those gods best supports my life? So it's a profound flip in looking at a theological issue. Because then we're not connected to the idea of needing to reflect God's judgment. God of the Ku Klux Klan and say, that creates a lot of friction on earth, creates emotions that I'm not comfortable with, and causes people to treat each other in a way I don't like. I can make those observations and choose a different God based on that perception. So in a sense, the only question the oracle asks, the only prayer we make is, how do I align myself with unconditional love? And how does that alignment expand my consciousness? The word for prayer in Yoruba is Aladura, from the Elysian Ala Odura. So Allah we know means light or illumination, or the vision of the blueprint of creation, or the hologram of creation that we get by virtue of connecting with the spirit of light, or Elah. Odu refers to the fact that we're asking for illumination. What does this movement look like in the arena of manifestation? And Ra, which is a little bit of a difficult, Ra in Yoruba can have a couple of connotations, I think. Literally, it probably means taboo. But the arbitrary sense of, okay, I'm going to eliminate snickerdoodles from my life. Ra is about creating, or actually creating boundaries that propel our consciousness into a place of expansion. So in a sense, creating those boundaries is about tearing down the old boundaries, right? So, let's say that you have a fear of water, right? So Ra is embracing the taboo of not being afraid of water. Does that make sense? So every time we need to expand our consciousness, we're accepting the Ra, or the taboo of destroying whatever boundary created the problem in the first place. So if we look at that, the ancients were really perceptive enough to know that there's certain times in our life when the challenges of life require a radical reorientation of our consciousness. We call those moments rites of passage. So when a baby's born, for example, having every single need met in the moment, in the womb, as a basis to, based on their connection to amniotic fluid, right? So the Ra of birth is letting go of the dependency on the umbilical cord, right? And learning how to negotiate life in the world. So from the moment of birth, our consciousness creates memory tapes based on different emotional reactions to our environment. We have a memory tape called, oh, this is what it feels like to be hungry. Oh, this is what it feels like to be tired. This is what it feels like to be in need of nurturing. This is what it feels like to be confused. All those things come into play in different memory tapes that are either reinforced by our culture or our culture helps us tear those down. Right? So in Yoruba culture, naming ceremony is wonderful. The whole community comes together and sings the baby into existence, literally, welcomes the child. The collective feeling of somebody welcoming is amazing. And I'm sure few of us have had that experience in our life. So we become kind of randomly using our own resources to sort out those memory tapes and feel out the issue of which ones serve us and which ones don't, And without that guidance from the community, we can misidentify bad feelings with unconditional love. And therein lies the genesis of most EB or mental illness or restrictions to spiritual growth or the need for medication through addiction. So in traditional Yoruba culture, a baby doesn't touch the earth until 3 days after birth. And when they touch the earth, they touch the left foot to the Odu Ije Ogbe marked on the tray, right? Remember, I've said repeatedly that Odu marked on the tray is literally a geometric pattern that becomes a physical portal to a stream of consciousness. So the very first moment of communal experience of a newborn baby in traditional Yoruba culture is to experience the connection through the left foot, which is the chakra that connects us to our ancestors, to connect that chakra with the consciousness stream of perfect alignment with creation. How good is that? It gives us a focal point of where to return in our consciousness as we meet challenges in our development. That becomes the paradigm for prayer and answered prayer. Andrew, are you frozen? You look skeptical there. Are you with me? There you go. Now you're moving. All right. Okay. So, the next big challenge in shifting consciousness is puberty right. And that's huge. Most of the divination I do is for children in adult bodies. People who did not get the communal support they needed to understand the shift that occurs when a child becomes an adult. Children are dependent on their parents for survival, and they're dependent on the need to do what their parents say so that they don't make fatal mistakes. But at the age when it becomes possible for a child to make babies, the communities, traditional communities, decide that's also the age where children need to start learning through their own experience. They need to learn by making their own mistakes. And in fact, consciousness at that point pushes us to a point where we want to learn on our own, that we start to resent any effort by our parents to tell us. It's called teenage rebellion. Any parents in the group here today who have teenagers who have experienced it, or am I the only one? So teenage rebellion is a necessary part of personal development. And because that's understood by the community, things that you can't tell your children, your grandparents can tell them, because they're one step removed from that daily grind of do this to survive. And so children can then start to make memory tapes based on the question of, this is what it looks like to be an adult. But again, that entire process is deeply rooted in the need to absorb the internal dynamics of unconditional love. You look at kids these days. Does that make me feel like an old man? Kids these days, can I say that? Egbe Toyin, can I say kids these days without sounding like a total old folk? But it's not uncommon for many teenagers that I encounter to get totally hooked on and obsessed by the notion of he disrespected me, he disrespected me. All right, okay, and so what? You know, an adult takes responsibility for their own emotions and doesn't blame anybody for anything. That's called growing up. But that as an idea is rarely, if ever, taught in our culture. And certainly we have thousands of hours a week of reality TV that teaches just the opposite. Every time there's a slight insult, you have to yell and scream, throw things, and then end up by pulling hair and biting a person. I mean, that's the whole problem dynamic that's promoted by the few who control the many, who have a vested interest in divide and conquer. And I'm saying that the prayer at puberty is, how do I align myself with the unconditional love at the seat of creation so that I can negotiate my life in the world without suffering the trauma of confusion, fear, and shame, right? Every potential prayer is rooted in the effort to eliminate those feelings, I would argue. Anybody disagree? Patty, do you agree with me?
I agree.
You know, you know, sometimes, and it's true, you know, we pray for health, and we have situations where we're experiencing health challenges. And it's still the same prayer. How do I take those challenges and seat them fully in the experience of unconditional love, which I believe is the ultimate healing medicine for physical, emotional, and spiritual challenges, you know. So in unconditional love has a specific feeling. And one of the things we learn in education is that when we sit, and this is an important thing to, I think is an important point. So raise your hand if you don't understand. When we stand in unconditional love, the physics that guides our life changes. And the rules that work in finite, mundane reality do not work in a state of unconditional love. And if that shift is not familiar to you, you will become disoriented, you will unconditional love, and you will be unable to reap the benefit of that state of being. Boy, that Carlos looked at me like, say that again. Standing in unconditional love alters the physical reality that you live in and requires a different orientation towards the world around you. In Greek, that shift is called apotheosis. The shift in consciousness that occurs as a result of entering that dimension, in English, is described as going down the rabbit hole. That was the whole point of the book, Alice in Wonderland, written by one of the leading physicists of the time, Lewis Carroll, who was describing the shift in perception that occurs as a result of altered states of consciousness. Who knew the book was that deep, right? The other book that had the same function was Wizard of Oz, pure Odu Ifa, telling us what the world looks like when we shift our consciousness and embrace unconditional love. The other book that explains the consequence of the shift in perception as a result of entering a different dimension of reality. Stop looking at me that way, Carlos. You look like you want to arm wrestle.
I'm going to tell you what's going on.
Please tell me what's going on. It's horrible.
I'm going through this whole internal process here. I am so moved by the power of being able to speak about unconditional love within the context of Ifa. in the world that I came from, an interfaith world, it was hard for other persons from other religious traditions to understand Ifa as something of love, like unconditional love, for them to understand Iwa Pele. So when, as you're speaking, I'm going back to all of these conversations I've had over the years with persons trying to normalize relationships with other religious traditions in my context. So that's what you saw going on, that struggle. Yeah.
Well, nice. Okay, so there you were. The expansion of consciousness is at play. I like it. So I'm going to take this one next step further. I really believe that you cannot understand self and moral until you put your head and heart in alignment. And the head and heart alignment is a consequence of unconditional love. You with me? Everybody with me? Anybody want to argue that?
Can you repeat
Sadie
that?
looks like she's skeptical.
No, can you repeat
Please,
what you said?
You broke it. I can't hear you. Ask again, please, Sadie.
Okay, can you repeat what you said? So you said that your head and your heart being in alignment is a consequence of unconditional love. Okay.
Right, and it's also the platform for altered states of consciousness, which allow you to go into the apotheum or orone, which is the only place where your prayers are effectively heard because it links the ori with the ipori. Ooh, you never thought of that, did you? Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
The gears in my head are going. So I've been doing something a little different with my oriki in the morning. So I've been taking each line and pausing to listen to the wisdom that's coming to me, speaking through my ori and my heart.
Nice.
And I've noticed that since I've been in this state of just seeking the unconditional love in my, not only in my practice, but as I venture out into the world and as I meet people, I am more in alignment with the wisdom that is provided to me. And now that you say that the ori and the heart being in alignment is the consequence of that love, it makes sense.
And more fundamentally is that when your heart and your head are in conflict, there is no platform for going into possession because that conflict is based on an unconscious understanding that you're not in alignment with your destiny.
So really it's kind of like those feelings that we have of being, say, stressed or overworked or overwhelmed, those are indicators that, hey, we need to return back to our center.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But I want to make a point that's going to sound really far out. And you can roll your eyes, not agree with me, we can still be friends. But I would argue that the level of consciousness that it takes to fly from Alpha Centauri to planet Earth is a level of consciousness that's deeply rooted in unconditional love. Can we go with that for a minute? Oh, Carlos really looks confused now. That's all right. Just hold that thought for a minute because I'm going to expand on it. If you read the literature on great work by Dr. Greer, if you read that literature, you'll see that people go through disorientation, that the beings they're speaking with fade in and out of reality, that a sense of gravitational pull shifts, that our vision changes and becomes blurred. Those are all indications of entering the apotheosis. The encounter with unconditional love is affecting our physical reality and our perception of the world we live in a way that we have to struggle to remain conscious. Uh-oh, Eileen looks flabbergasted. And I would suggest something further. Does anybody disagree with that? Anybody think that's too far out? Patty, you look perplexed. Are you with me on that idea, sort of?
Sort of, but can you talk about that and versus disassociation?
You know, that's a good point. Yeah, disassociation is resistance to a shift in reality. They're clearly not the same thing. It can be experienced as similar, but that's a good question. Disassociation, not always, but it can be either disassociation is one of two things. It's either a reaction to a memory of a childhood trauma or it's fear of the unknown. So I'm not sure there's an absolute answer to that question in that it's kind of a case-by-case situation, right?
Okay.
Sort of, but I do know that there's a great deal of literature on the notion that the encounter, you know, missing time. Have you heard missing time and missing people disappear and walk through walls and all kinds of strangeness? That is all a consequence of expanding our consciousness. Let me put it in a different way, which is really, I think, profound. There's a significant difference in the world that was lived in by Albert Einstein and the world lived in by Nikola Tesla. Albert Einstein believed that the absolute limit of movement in creation was the speed of light. As a consequence, those who share are limited in their ability to engineer energetic phenomena based on their physics. Tesla, who was able to tap into free energy, was able to do that, not believe that the speed of light represented the ultimate limitation of movement in creation. The fact that he didn't do that had two consequences. One was that he was able to see things that Einstein was not able to see. And the other consequence was that he came to the theoretical conclusion that the speed of light was a self boundary created by human perception.
Okay.
So if you live in a universe where speed of light is not the ultimate boundary of movement, then you can notice it when you encounter it. If you believe speed of light is the ceiling for energetic movement, then when you encounter alternatives, it won't register. So why does that matter? Anybody? Here's the answer. Once you admit to the possibility of moving faster than light, and once you notice that that's a phenomenon that's real in the universe, you have the ability to move backwards and forwards in time. It's called astral travel. It's the heart of the sacred technology of Iyami Osharanga. So if you come to that Egbe with the belief that time limits your perception, your ability to move in and out of sequential time will be severely challenged.
We could fly then, right, Baba?
Exactly. Flying is the ability to astral travel is stepping with both feet into the apotheum. And I will say this, and I'll try not to get angry about it because my Odu warned me against getting angry today, my Odu for the day. The few who control the many understand the apotheosis effect, and they're doing everything they can to make sure you don't understand. And I find that offensive and unacceptable. It's the reason why our faith is so severely attacked, because those who know we know. And they don't want us to have confidence in that knowledge. I would go so far as to say that big money is being spent to pay people within our faith to say nonsense that deflects us from that reality. Don't make me name names, but I see that going on in our communities. And least you not believe me, 24/7 in Nigeria, there's a Christian crusade. There's at least 4, maybe 8 people that rotate that crusade, so that any day of the year in Nigeria, there's a revival meeting in a big tent with thousands of people. Those meetings are planned in Langley, Virginia. Who knows what happens in Langley, Virginia, besides planning Christian crusades in Nigeria? Anybody? Carlos knows what's happens in Langley, Virginia. I'll bet. I can see the look of recognition on his face. Langley, Virginia is the location for the headquarters of the CIA. Coincidence, or maybe not. So the point is, there's a lot of pressure towards conformity to not see, understand, or believe what I'm talking about. You know? But it's my experience, it's my reason for wanting to get together every 91 days. It's my reason for building community, is that I can go so far into the apotheum on my own, but I can go farther if 16 other people are holding my hand when I make that journey. And collectively, we can share that experience in a way that we can bring back heaping gobs of unconditional love that'll have a positive influence on the entire community. We get 16 people at a time that travel into the apotheum. We can heal any illness, anywhere in the world, to any member of our community without them even necessarily having to be there. That's part of the rules of the way the apotheum or Ola Room works. That is the mechanism through which prayers are answered. If you don't know you have that ability, you're never going to access that ability. And your prayers for healing will go unanswered. Now, night sky looks skeptical. Are you with me, my man? Are you with me? Or maybe you're frozen there.
No, that was just my thinking face.
Oh, I see. The thinking face is good. I'm sorry, I took that way past where the bus don't run. I don't know if everybody followed me with the logic and all that. The good Dr. O'Toole had a slight twinkle of recognition somewhere else.
Well, we become true healers.
Rant. So I thank
we
you
become
for
true healers, right? That's when we become true shamans, right?
Sure, shaman. I would say that's when we become true to ourselves. Forget shaman, forget priest, forget juju man. We become human beings in that moment. We access the potential that God gave us so that God could see the effect of unconditional love in a world of life, death, transformation, and rebirth. God knows that unconditional love works in a world where there's, but not so clear how that all comes into being in the real world. So think of this: somebody asked about the correlation between, I'm saying, Jonathan and alchemy. Here's the correlation. We invoke possession by the spirit of Elah, right? If you think about it, Elah is a holographic record of everything that's ever happened. And that record is growing every fraction of a second, every fraction of a second, with input from the consciousness of all of creation. That's a hell of a lot of information to go into possession with. And in fact, if we fully embrace the consciousness of Elah, our head would explode, I guarantee. All right. So what we do in order to access that really unlimited source of information, what we do to access that is that we fragment it, right? We say, Elah, we want to look at a little piece of reality, not the whole thing. So how do we do that? Anybody? We look at creation through the mechanism of the light of Elah by asking Elah to guide our consciousness to an immediate and observable crack in the cosmic egg. There is no alchemy without problem resolution dynamic. Alchemy is co-creation related to focusing our consciousness on that which is not perfect. Which again is another reason for no judgment. We all got problems. You know, it's become the social norm to not admit problems because it's embarrassing to whisper in dark corners the few problems that we're willing to talk about, and to assume that it somehow makes us less than human to admit to a mistake. That's the greatest force of control that the few who control the many have. I mean, they've just convinced us to buy that nonsense. There's nothing that I've done wrong in my life that I wouldn't talk about in a minute, especially if you ask me, you know. No shame, no blame. I've screwed up big time, more than once, you know. And I feel my role as an elder is to share those experiences with everybody so you can try and avoid the same mistakes. Hello, what other function do I have? Except, oh boy, I screwed up on that one. If you want to know how to not make a relationship work, just check with me. I got a whole litany of things that make a relationship fall apart. I can talk about that for days. You know, but I'm blessed now to have a little more insight into how to make a relationship work. But that's a good example. Actually, I went through a period before I met about 7 years of being alone, and I was really lonely. You know what I mean? I mean, I felt the aloneness. I did not want to be alone. It's horrible. Right? And leading up to that period of being alone, I had some unhealthy relationships where I blamed partners for the dysfunction in the relationship. And I was blessed to work with Oshun Nikki, who did not want to hear the blame game at all, wouldn't tolerate it, wouldn't listen to it, could care less, just stop talking, right? That allowed me to take responsibility for those issues that I was projecting onto others. You know, if you're in an abusive relationship, it's not the abuser's fault, it's your fault for accepting the abuse. Hello? That was one of the great, and I was tolerating some embarrassing abuse back in the day. And once I owned that fully, then I got an email from Fajalabi that made me think, ooh, this is somebody I want to meet. So, and that became the answer to the prayer. So the whole time I was struggling to understand the reason for not being in a healthy relationship, I could have blamed God. And if I did, I'd still be blaming God, I suspect, you know. But at some point, I thought, okay, blaming God's not working. Let's try something else. So, and the first journey in that shift came, I called Iyanla Vizant. You all know Iyanla. I told her I was having troubles with people she knew, which was even more embarrassing. And her response was, she said, do not let anybody step on your light. In other words, putting the responsibility back in my court, you know? So in the process of turning that around, I wrote that down on a 3x5 card. And every time I got angry about the consequence of an abusive relationship, I'd get pull the card out of my pocket and I'd say, Iyanla said, don't let anybody step on your light, right? So I was, for the first week or so after she told me that, I was reading the card every 10 or 15 minutes, right? Patty knows, she knew me back in those days. So then it got to once every half an hour, then once an hour, then twice a day, then once a day, and once a week, and eventually I lost the card. But in that process of using that process, let's call it, to shift my consciousness from blame to taking responsibility, you know, it was a gradual shift. You can't just, in my experience, the good doctor will be my witness on this. You can't say, okay, I'm no longer going to accept abuse. Nah, it doesn't quite happen that easily or that quickly. Just telling yourself that with your mind pretty much doesn't work. But if you embrace the discipline, and hear me clearly, if you embrace the discipline of spiritual growth, then you tell yourself, make no judgment, even though everything in your body, your heart, your soul, and every fiber of your being wants to blame somebody for your problems. The discipline says, don't do it. So then, if you're serious about the discipline, you sit down and you think, why am I going there? What is it in me that I'm refusing to look at that makes it really, really important to be in a relationship with a real asshole that I can easily blame, and everybody I talk to about that relationship will take my side because the other person being really clearly and obviously awful. What is it about me that needs to enter that dynamic? What is it about me that needs to resist unconditional love? What is it about me that makes me think that I don't deserve that? And it's that process that sets the foundation, I believe, for engaging in what we could call effective prayer. So for me, it was the process of embracing the discipline of Ifa to get to the point, which I referred to earlier with Paul Tillich, of asking the right question. Well, you can ask God until your gums bleed why you haven't won the lottery. And I'm pretty sure you'll never get an answer because it's so far beyond anything relevant that it doesn't show up on God's radar. But if you want to ask the question, how come I can't responsibly live in the world? You're going to get instant feedback on that question, I guarantee. So, doctor, comment on this. You're looking a little too smug for my liking here. I don't like it when you agree with me that much. So talk.
Oh boy, Baba.
What would she say?
I totally agree. One of the things that is very important when we find ourselves in, especially with the example that you gave, is that asking ourselves, what is it that we really want? And then taking the next necessary steps to correct that or to create what it is that we want. And a part of that is the responsibility and the discipline of it, right? Taking the responsibility, because in all of it, right, it doesn't matter what the other person did. Yes, he cheated. Yes, she cheated. Yes, your father or your mother was an alcoholic, right? Yes, they were mean to you. Yes, I was bullied in school. All of these things. But the piece and the most important part of it is that in all of it, it is my responsibility, your responsibility to create the space that is needed for our healing. Just because someone did something, that doesn't matter. It for damn sure is your responsibility to handle what needs to be handled for your healing. So that's the that of it. there's no more to it. I mean, the steps take a minute, but at the end of the day, that's the that. That's the what do I do? You take responsibility and you own why you're there and why you continue to stay there, because there's a lie somewhere that you bought into after you realize that, oh shit, abuse is not something that is supposed to be happening. That's not normal. Me getting up and having to put 3 extra layers of makeup on my face so nobody knows that I have a black eye. That's not normal. That's not supposed to be the thing. So why am I still here? So what lie did I buy into in order to stay in that situation? That's me taking responsibility for that and then creating a plan to do something different. And so with that, I'll land my plane.
Right. Yes, listen, I'm going to share something that is a source of disappointment to me. Disappointment, I'd be fair. I'm constantly dealing with the issue of people calling me and complaining. I'm a grandfather, so I've got homos that have God kids, right? And I'm constantly hearing the complaint. Oh, my godmother didn't fix my problem. She doesn't know what I'm doing. My godfather made a bow and I still got the problem. What's wrong with him? I need to find a better elder. I need to find a better teacher. The conversation is, I'm not taking responsibility for my issue. I'm just looking for something to blame. And, I tend to let people come to that conclusion on their own, but don't try my patience on that one, because when I address it directly, I can be a little unfriendly. So consider that the next time you're engaging in the endless, mindless, ineffective, and really offensive game of, well, he does it right, she does it, he knows it, all of that. I don't want to hear it. There's no one in this family who's not fundamentally rooted in the idea of developing good character. There's somebody who's got good intentions and asks for advice. They're never going to tell you anything wrong. Still can't figure out the problem. Then your job is to ask the elder to help you examine where you're not seeing things clearly, and possibly take you to someone who's a more expert in that particular issue. If you come to me with an alcoholism as an issue, I'm not even going to try to fix it, because I've never had that struggle. But I know people in the family who have, and the fact that I've never been an alcoholic is no reason to blame me for not being a good owl. It's all just a ridiculous conversation that really puts a wedge in the ability to create unity, I believe. Carlos, you've really had a brainstorm today. It looks like your mind is swirling. Share with us what you're thinking.
I'm going to have to revisit this, review the video. My mind is being stretched. It's being stretched. I'm being challenged. And it's exciting for me. I'm thanking God and all of this. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. You're looking excited, so that's good. Falai, talk to us. Oop, stop your eating for a minute and tell me what you're thinking. Oop, Falai, did you hear me? Yeah.
Well, for me, I think when we have a disagreement with somebody that is supposed to be mentoring us or teaching us, we do get in a personal issue with it when we don't think we're getting what we want out of the situation. And I find that most people
who get mad at another person is only because they don't get what they want out of the situation. For myself, a few years ago, for me to stop conflict, I asked myself, are you mad just because you're not getting your way? And that seems to be what most people are dealing with when it's you and homo and you have a mentor or whatever it is, you're not getting what you want. And you also are not speaking exactly what you want. When you don't get what you want, you just get in your feelings. Sometimes it's because you are not wanting to offend another person, or they think for myself, they think I'm too abrupt with my truth. So then it silences me. But Ifa has allowed me to learn that we have to speak our truth so that we don't have to be whining. The whining is what gets on my nerves for me, because a lot of people won't speak their truth.
All right, so I would say, this is a radical position, but I would say God gave us anger to identify unresolved internal, and that anger is never caused by another person, ever. That only triggers the reminder that we've got work to do. Think about that for that statement has made me very unpopular in our community. And it always gets the response, well, you say I can't be angry, but Baba, you really are an asshole, so I have to get mad at you because you got problems, you got issues. All right, whatever. But that's not the reason anger was invented, in my opinion. All right, Night Sky, talk to me here.
Hi, Bob. Thanks. I think I'm somebody that has a lot of feelings, and so I've learned the power of feelings and emotions. I also am in the mental health field. I was diagnosed with ADHD, and so there's I do a lot of talks and healing around emotions and regulation with spirit as well. And so yeah, I think those feels are a real thing, and they tell us something, they're definitely tools. They're another sense, I feel like, for us humans.
True. Well put, yes.
Yeah, I feel like we came here to, and this body to experience, and in order to experience is use our feelings, right? On all the senses, and the emotions being one of those ways that we sense things. But they can get when they start controlling our life, that's when it's something that we need to balance and hold it back. And as when we're talking about the dynamics too between, I'm going to say, medicine people, I think that what came to me was, I think there's also, well, what I love about what I'm learning from Ifa is that I love the Iwa Pele way of living, especially when you're divining and an Awo. So I really respect it, and I'm grateful for that, because I've been around medicine people who are not of that perspective, and so that causes a lot of harm too. I know there's a lot of medicine people who are very violent, whether it's sexual harassment or violence, and gender and discrimination as well. And so I think so yes, to definitely navigate your emotions as you're speaking to medicine people, and also there are certain, also don't give your light right to somebody just because they are a medicine person. If there's something wrong, you need to call it out, step away, and if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. You've identified one of the hardest problems there is to deal with as a human being, and that is this: if you accept someone else's exploitation, it is so hard to admit that you made a mistake that you will allow yourself to be exploited for the rest of your life, rather than say, I screwed up. Think about that. one of the hardest problems I've ever encountered as a diviner in counseling. You understand? It's the story, the shaman story about the shaman holding the rattlesnake. You know that story? And every few minutes, the snake bites the guy and he goes, ouch. And his student said, well, why don't you just get rid of the snake? And the elder says, I would, but I don't know what that feels like. That just sunk in, right? So listen, we're running a little late. I'm going to call on people that haven't spoken, if you don't mind. If I'm through with that and you want to say something, raise your hand. But Egbe Toyin, do you have a comment? Did she say no? It looks like a no. No.
No, I just really enjoyed this conversation because I think I shared with you privately something that I was working on with my family. And definitely you you have to be able to deal with those unresolved issues in order to work in that divine space with other people else, you know. So you're right on. Everything you are talking about is just right where I'm at. So I'm really grateful to be in this group and to be amongst everyone that's working on the same thing. So it's really a blessing.
Okay.
Ashe.
Thank you. I feel the same way. Ia Falador. Where's she? There she is. I was just thinking about you the other day. I hadn't seen your face on Zoom in a while. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm hanging in there. I need to schedule a conversation with you at your earliest.
No problem.
But today
can do it right after this class if you want.
Yes, sir. That would be perfect. Today's class was quite timely. Quite timely indeed. So I'm thankful for the lessons and the teaching, and especially the parable that the story that you gave at the end, especially about not letting go of the things that hurt because you don't know what that feels like. Like, wow.
Yeah, that's one of the big stumbling blocks to communal healing. Certainly, we've got such profound dysfunction in our community, and a lot of it's around sexual and economic exploitation. I mean, it's the kind of behavior you just wouldn't accept. But for some reason, if somebody says, "I will blah blah blah," and now I'm going to exploit you sexually and financially, that makes it okay all of a sudden. Sorry, don't think so. You know, rules of decent living are rules of decent living. That what you call yourself is irrelevant. You know, the best role model for Iwa Pele I ever met was my father, who knew nothing about Ifa at all. But he was impeccable in his commitment to good character. I mean, really, really was. All right. So yeah, I'll call you. Yeah, thank you. William, do you want to say something? Hassan?
Ashe, everybody, Ashe. Oh, Baba, me and you are connected, man. I'm telling you, man. The more I learn about Ifa and Iwa Pele, my mind just expands. I'm in an expansion process where I'm connecting with everybody and everyone, and it's marvelous. And then, you know, as far as ascending to different levels of life, once you reach a certain level, you somewhat get graduated. I didn't know about the graduation process that you go to the next level. And I'm in that next level where I'm connected to you, you're connected, Sarah, everybody's connected, joined together, just spiritually mentally before, even with the components of sexuality. It's different aspects where I'm finding out it's different aspects as far as spiritually. First, it should start, any relationship should start on a spiritual connotation before it actually evolves into the sexual. Because if you have the spiritual and the mental first, the sex would be great. I'm fine. But
too much information. La, 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 la.
But if you think with your lower self, which most of us do, going into relationships, you look at a somebody and be like, ooh, they look good. And then what you have is what I say, 2 hours of maybe, I give myself 2 hours of great sex, but after that, there's nothing there. It's nothing because there's no spiritual connection to nothing. That's just us humans. Now, when we can get that, first it starts with the organism first, spiritually, mentally, physically, getting in alignment with ourselves, or being alone for 7 years. I'm on my 7th year too, Baba, where it's good to be alone because you get to learn who you are, what you love, your likes, what are your dislikes, I don't want to take up too much time, but I love you guys. I love you, man, because you helped me elevate to another level that I'll, thanks to my Demi started that she made her transition, but she's still with me and she's still guiding me, once you make your connections with your ancestors, they don't go nowhere. And actually they become one with you. The interconnectedness of humanity is needed now. The vibration of unconditional love is needed, period. You have to let go. I had to let go of my ego to grow. You have to let go of yourself. Some people are afraid to let go, of what we've been taught. Primary socialization is a must, but the socialization from the environment that we were raised in. I'm from New York City, and that says it all. That says it all.
Listen, William, let me move on to others. I love you and appreciate you, and thank you. Right. Denise, did you want to say something? Denise? Iya Tifashe? It got overcast, so all of a sudden it's dark in here. Can you turn on the light over there? Yeah, we're gonna get some light here. Tifashe, do you want to say something? I've got two Iya Adunis. Is it the same person? Did you want to say something? Can you all hear me? Thumbs up? Yeah, okay. Diosa, do you want to say something? Oh, there you go.
I don't have anything to say. It's good to see you, Baba. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria, good to see you there. Do you want to say something, Maria? Oh, there we go. Now you can see me. Maria? So, Sebastian?
Hey, Baba. If this isn't too complicated, I was going to ask you how to evoke Elah. Invoke.
Yeah, you repeat the Eureka. It's pretty simple. In our in our tradition, I don't like to be restrictive. Elah invocation is usually done after Ifa initiation because that plants the seed. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying it's part of a process that you might consider if that's something you want to experience. The truth is we can all experience spirit without being initiated. In English, we call that grace. Grace is a real thing. Grace is actually recognized in Africa. There's some people that go into possession with spirit without being initiated, and they are recognized as elders because they're able to effectively do the work of that spirit. So, but the great blessing from our Yoruba ancestors is they gave us oriki that are extremely effective for identifying specific forms of our consciousness. Night Sky mentioned that we have, I think he said we have more than 6 senses, or at least I'm saying that. The truth is we have 256 different senses. Each Odu has a different feeling tone to it. If you start to notice what it feels like when an Odu hits the mat, you'll be able to recognize when that Odu comes into the room even before you cast the divination. And each of those feelings is different. and has a different reaction and connects us to a different stream of consciousness. Now, if we know we have 256 portals of consciousness, how come we're not being taught that in school? And if you think the people that arrange the curriculum don't know that, then you and I need to have a serious talk. You know, it's clear from any esoteric occult traditions that we have a large number of senses that are untapped, unexploited, unused. And I'm suggesting that we might want to rethink it. Yan Yim, did you want to say something? I hope I pronounced your name right. Yan Yim, I think I did.
Baba, no, I'm good. I just, sorry, I got in late.
That's
I
right.
just woke
That's
up.
right. That's all right. No problem. Oh, it'll be posted in a couple of days, I think. Anybody
Great.
else want to say anything? Anybody? So let me just say for housekeeping, we're Chicago 23rd to the 29th. I'll be in Chicago. I've got spaces open for initiation. I'll be doing 2 initiations for sure. I'll likely be doing I will be doing an event on the Saturday of that week at the Mama Africa Botanic and Clothing Store. If you're in the area, please come and join with us. The good news is Falokun is going to be providing snacks. Her ideas of a snack is like a 9-course meal. So you'll be able to come and listen and feed yourself dinner in the process. I'm also going to be doing, I think Baba Falokun will be in town. He's asked me to do some classes. So if you're there anytime during that week, I'll definitely be doing classes on Sunday and Monday. You're all free to join and welcome in. If you have questions about that or want to schedule anything, check with Ia Diosa. She's the chief for the Chicago events and keeping that organized. September, oh God, what's it? September 21st to the 25th. We'll be here. We'll be in Shreveport. That's filling up quickly. If you want to come and you haven't spoken to me already, please do that. I'm speaking to you, Ia Otun. I need to know if you want one of the log cabins or if you're going to stay with. I want to know what your plans are for staying. We've got the clubhouse and there's also motels. So let me know what your preference is. You follow? Do you understand my question?
Yes, Bainy Baba.
No, she doesn't. She does. Yeah, okay. And Sadie, I've already got you earmarked for one of the rooms in the clubhouse, so you can relax. You're good. You're good. You're good. The Yellow told me she's going to with pink hair. I don't know. What does the elder mothers think about that? Showing up for initiation with pink hair? Is that what you're going to do? I'm messing with you. Relax. We're good. She got it finally. She's laughing. Thank God. All right. So yeah, I guess we're good. So listen, if you want to come in September, I'll give you a week to let me know because I got about 3 slots open at this point. One of the EIs that was here who left has made it easier. She's bringing her tent. She's going to camp out near where we're meeting, so that opens up another slot. So everybody good? Anybody want to say anything? Got any questions? We're moving forward. Did we answer the question? Does God answer our prayers? I think we took a stab at it. What do you think? Took a stab at it. All right, I'm going to call it a day. Stay safe. Know you're loved and appreciated. See you next time.
We love you, Baba. Thank you so much.
Okay, everybody.
Thank you.
Baba.
Bravo, everyone.
Bravo.
Double.